The Halo franchise has a long-standing history of a contentious fan base, with many fans not liking any changes at all, while others are more accepting. Like many franchise fan bases, the Halo community has a wide range of opinions on the series and its changes over the years. The Halo TV series started development in 2013 and was set for a release in 2015. Only 7 years after the planned release, the show finally dropped, and it's an even more divisive shit show than anything in the past and has many fans up in arms. A previous video on my channel was a no spoiler review of Episode 1, but with as egregious as the series has already become, my videos will not be avoiding spoilers going forward, so if you want to avoid them, be aware. Episode 1 starts on the desert colony of Madrigal that we've seen in the trailers. We first see a group of colonist insurrectionists who are sitting around gambling at cards and bitching about the UNSC. It's being set up that they're in a sort of war with the UNSC, with some points of contention being the mining of the heavy hydrogen fuel that's used for starships, as well as the colonists' desire for freedom and independence. They boast about killing Marines, but make it clear that the Spartans are viewed as invincible, bloodthirsty killing machines. We're then introduced to Quan Ha, aka Frankenmullet, who we see out with her friends. They show her as being the most intelligent and ambitious of her friends. Her friends are basically set up as a bunch of hippie stoners, but she's the one with big dreams of leaving the planet and making a life for herself. After finding a plant with hydrogen attached that they're apparently going to use as drugs, she spots a glint off in the distance and goes over to investigate, coming across an alien dropship. The fact that she's not immediately killed by a scout or perimeter guard is a fucking miracle. She runs back to her friends to warn them of the danger, but the stoned assholes don't listen, instead running towards it to see it for themselves. They're all blown to smithereens moments later when the Covenant plasma starts raining down. Mullet sets off a flare to warn the base and rushes back, at one point jumping down a 30-foot hill, coming out of it into a perfect roll and suffering no damage whatsoever.
My back!
She gets back to the base and is forced to hide when the Covenant starts attacking. They burst through the gate and immediately start terminatoring their way through withering gunfire that the humans are laying down with 2 mounted machine guns and at least a dozen rifles. The humans seem incapable of even breaking a shield, let alone downing an elite. I'll take a moment to point out that they're using 500-year-old guns, modern to today, as opposed to something from their own timeline that would be more appropriate. I've seen this defended online with people saying that it shows them being poor and lacking the resources of the UNSC, instead having to resort to using old blueprints and manufacturing facilities. This is total bullshit, as it would likely be easier for them to get a hold of old or stolen UNSC gear rather than these 500-year-old relics. As the humans are being slaughtered and the situation looks dire, a UNSC ship appears overhead. In drops the Master Chief and he is all out of gum.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass.
Jin Ha, Mullet's father and leader of the colony, actually shoots at the chief when he engages the elite that he was fighting just moments before. This is the same elite that Jin just witnessed mow down a whole closet full of civilians where he had sent his daughter to hide. This makes perfect sense that he would shoot the Spartan that he's heard horror stories about, rather than the hulking alien who's just slaughtered your friends and family. Chief then pulls a ridiculous 40-foot twisting jump maneuver over the elite that he's fighting, and this is an obvious callback nostalgia bait to the best cutscene from the first Halo Wars game. Silver Team drops in and begins fighting, and I can't help but think, why the fuck did we not get Blue Team? Every member of Silver Team directly emulates a member of Blue Team. You have Discount Fred, who's the not chief dude of the group, with a predilection towards melee weapons. You have Discount Kelly, the fast one, and Discount Linda, the marksman or sniper. They're even using the Howling Wolf symbol, that's the symbol for Blue Team, and this is a direct kick in the nuts to fans. I guess one positive aspect is that we don't have to see Blue Team profaned on screen, at least at this point. The Spartans start mopping the floor with the elites, pulling bombastic and risky maneuvers, which are more characteristic of the later games and books, rather than the Bungie era. In the earlier lore, the Spartan 2s are portrayed as being highly strategic and tactical, which is an element that I really always enjoyed. At the end of the fight, Mullet and her father share a sigh of relief seeing one another alive. This is short-lived, however, as the last elite in the compound starts hobbling its ass over towards Mullet. I don't really understand why it's going after this unarmed, hiding child. The elites have been shown in previous lore to have a sense of honor, but that seems to be out the fucking window. Instead of engaging it from a distance to act as a distraction, which might allow both of them to escape, Jin charges the damn thing, ineffectually shooting it, and becomes impaled on its energy sword. This does, however, set up the necessary revenge arc for Mullet. Chief doesn't hear this gunfire from like 30 meters away, despite the fact that he's wearing a suit that enhances his hearing beyond what a normal human would be capable of, and a normal human would have totally heard this from the same distance. He literally only notices it when he looks over and sees Jin's lifeless body dropped by the elite. He finishes the thing off, and the Spartans declare the compound clear after only a cursory search, despite the fact that they didn't hear this elite hobbling its ass through the middle of the compound, taking gunfire just moments before. Chief notes that the lone survivor is a juvenile, and I'm sure he would know of the insurrectionist tendencies of this place, but they go off to find the dropship and excavation site, leaving Mullet unattended, despite her cries to help her and not leave.
Just makes common sense.
They find the dropship and excavation site where it was seen earlier by Mullet. How did the UNSC or colony not find this place when it was like a mile or two away from the compound and the artifact was only like 50 feet underground? Surely they would have surveyed this place.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Chief and not Linda enter the cave, and instead of clearing the place, they walk directly towards the center of the room, towards the MacGuffin that they need to find. We're shown an elite watching as Chief activates the artifact, who has a perfect backshot on the two of them, but instead runs off instead of taking his opportunity to kill the two demons. This doesn't make much sense, as I feel like he would totally take the opportunity to take out these two Spartans and earn himself a good bit of prestige and glory. Instead, he runs off to tell the Covenant because there's no other way for them to set it up other than lazy writing. The rest of the episode is fucking dull, and it's the penance that we pay for the cool action sequence that most fans are probably most interested in. In the episode, we're introduced to a lot of the other major players. We're shown Halsey, who's constantly busting a nut over the artifact, trying to maintain her iron grip on the Spartans, and being bitched out by Admiral Perengoski. She pretty much takes the bitching, with Perengoski threatening to cut her funding because her Spartans failed to save more than one survivor. Halsey whines that they showed up late, saying that that's the reason that they couldn't do more, and then dangles the unknown artifact in front of Perengoski that they have no idea would be useful to the UNSC in any way. This actually does sort of satisfy Perengoski for some fucking reason, but then she bitches out Halsey further when she sees the project that she was supposed to have canceled that she's still working on. Halsey also doesn't show much of the care or motherly disposition that she has for the Spartan 2s, and in particular Chief. Instead, just showing that she wants to maintain her control and influence over them. We're also introduced to the Covenant, who have a human living with and aligned with them for some fucking reason. I'm sure that this will be explained later, but this doesn't really make much sense. I doubt that the Covenant would have been capable of raising a human child, and if they didn't raise her, why the fuck is she on their side? We also see the Prophet of Mercy, who looks pretty bad and has been mischaracterized, acting more like the scheming Prophet of Truth rather than the religious zealot he's shown to be in the games. I wonder if they've just homogenized the prophets as schemers rather than giving them unique character traits. We're also introduced to Captain and Miranda Keys, who are basically just there for name recognition. They've also been race swapped, which wouldn't be a big deal, except it's pretty much only been done to appease social justice crazies, and because they know they can get away with it because they're more or less just side characters. Neither one of them seems like they'll be commanding a ship. Miranda is also the one shown to try to cajole the recently orphaned Mullet into helping the UNSC make a propaganda video that would be used on other colonies. She does this despite telling Mullet that she's not a politician, and the fact that we're told that she's a scientist. Why is she the one to try to convince Mullet to help them with this propaganda video? Doesn't really make much sense. Other than that, Chief is mainly shown babysitting Mullet on their interminably long trek home. Why is this journey taking so long? Why aren't they using slip space? Their interactions are basically to set up and show the Chief's lack of social skills, with Chief telling a joke that doesn't land, and basically not being able to relate to Mullet. For some reason, when Mullet tells him that he killed her mother, Chief actually divulges the details of this mission. Is this shit not classified? Chief likely wouldn't even tell her any of this. It just seems wildly out of character. Then comes arguably the most contentious part of the first episode that we were informed about even before the series aired. The Chief removes his fucking helmet. He does this after the UNSC deoxygenates the ship to kill Mullet and decreases the oxygen in his suit by 40% to incapacitate him. Apparently, the UNSC aren't really worried about brain damage for their best weapon. After Chief chiefs his way out of this situation and Mullet comes to, she aims the weapon they have on board at him, thinking that he betrayed her. Chief explains to her that the outer composites of his armor, blah 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 blah, won't even make a dent, then proceeds to take off his helmet, telling her that she would have to shoot him in the head to kill him. Why the fuck does he do this? You're telling me after their little heart-to-heart that Chief is ready to let her kill him? Chief would never do this. He wouldn't remove his helmet in a near combat or dangerous situation, and he definitely wouldn't do it if he thought someone was going to shoot him. Plus, this version of the Chief is shown to be so socially inept that he wouldn't even think of this plan in the first place. Anyways, the dumbass plan works, and they begin to try to disable AI control of the ship. One nice touch is that Mullet is not shown to just know how to do the things Chief is instructing her how to do, but they wreck that a moment later when she Fonzie's the damn thing by shooting it. How would she not think this was going to ricochet and kill her, or fuck up what they were trying to do? Just as they regain control of the ship, they're hit by an EMP that comes out of what appears to be the mass driver from Halo Reach, so I was completely expecting a Mac round, but whatever. Chief then starts tarting out and walking incredibly slowly towards the artifact, and upon touching it, engages Deus Ex Machina mode. This results in the ship not only regaining power, but immediately reigniting its engines and disabling all of the UNSC facility around them. This allows Chief and Mullet to escape and sail off into the space set. The fact that this took more than 7 years is mind boggling. 343 has wildly mismanaged this franchise ever since they took over.
You shit the money bed, my friend.
I used to think some small changes to the games and direction of the lore wasn't so bad, and that 343 would eventually find their footing and improve things. This just hasn't happened, though. They tend to make questionable decisions and then make dramatic changes once they face criticism from fans. It's actually not all that surprising that they wanted to do an alternate timeline because they're routinely fucking shit up and they probably just wanted a free pass. Almost all of the characters are done poorly, with basically no one adhering to their depictions in established lore. I've already mentioned the problems with many of the characters, but most non background characters seem to be set up for one of three purposes: to deconstruct the Halo universe, to push the social justice narrative that has pervaded most of entertainment media these days, or simple name recognition and nostalgia. Some characters exhibit all of these traits, like both Captain and Miranda Keyes. I wonder what they'll do with a well liked and established character that is black, like Sergeant Johnson. Will we see him at all? If we do, it's likely that he'll be dramatically changed because they can't possibly have a cool and reliable buddy for the Chief. The two most egregiously changed characters are Halsey and, of course, the Chief. Halsey is too young, and she's not snarky, condescending, or tough enough. She should basically shit on people when she views them as not intelligent enough for her respect, and she should be cunning in her manipulations instead of being straightforward and obvious like they show her. Chief should simultaneously be more stoic and less robotic. In the previous lore, he's rarely, if ever, shown interacting with someone in a situation outside of combat or a military command structure. They force him to interact with Mullet to showcase his lack of social skills and to force the impetus of his change of character onto her. They'll be showing him develop a more emotional and empathetic nature as a result of Mullet, as opposed to the way it's depicted in the games as a result of losing his best friend and companion Cortana. The TV series has also shown him get emotional or angry despite having an emotional suppressant. The Chief should be shown to be someone of greater control who does not have these types of outbursts. They should not show his face or have him take off his helmet. The games and lore basically never show him doing this. Even at the end of Halo Combat Evolved, when he takes it off, he's in a longsword by himself and has just been through a harrowing experience. This is also even retconned in either Halo the Flood or Halo First Strike. The Christian Bale Batman voice is just terrible.
I'm not wearing hockey pads.
Steve Downes should have been the one to voice the Chief, just like they had Jen Taylor voicing Cortana. The helmet shouldn't come off, and this would allow them to have Steve voice him, but even if it did have to come off, maybe that's when you give Pablo a crack at Chief, if you have to at all. But really, the Chief should not be a high profile or glamorous role for the actor who's playing him. Sorry, Pablo. They could have easily adapted the games, or done an original story that would actually slot into the canon without the need for the dramatic changes. I've really struggled with this. I wanted to love this show and for it to be badass and revitalize the Halo franchise. Although the action is pretty cool, this is actually one of the easier things for them to do in my opinion, and you have to endure the rest of the bullshit in the show to even see it. It also leaves a bad taste in my mouth, more or less, just because the series as a whole has no basis or grounding in or respect for the lore. The Chief has been mischaracterized, and this is further highlighted by putting him into situations that he's really never been in the previous lore, like interacting with civilians in a non military capacity. I know that there are many Halo fans who will feel like I feel, but there are also many who will eat it up and defend it regardless of anything. They're entitled to their opinion, but I definitely disagree. I've heard many people say that they won't watch the series at all or won't watch past the first episode. I'll subject myself to this so that I can put the word out to people who want to know about it but don't want to watch the show themselves. The last few years has started to feel like the beginning of the end of the Halo franchise as we know it for me. In reflecting on this feeling, I think that this has actually been occurring since 343 took control of the franchise, and I was just slow to come to that realization. The TV series has also caused me to have a recent theory.
Oh, is that an apostrophe? I think you mean an epiphany.
With 343's track record of making changes, usually dramatic changes in response to harsh fan criticisms, I can't help but think that this is being used to either test the waters or as the actual vehicle to make fundamental and huge changes to the Halo franchise. With Halo Infinite's introduction of the Endless and their time manipulation abilities, I can't help but think that 343 is going to pull some sort of multiverse mumbo jumbo just because it's Hansel,
Hansel. So hot right now. Hansel.
or even some time loop bullshit. Anything they can do to make dramatic changes to the core of Halo. I would hope that I'm incorrect about this, but I don't have high hopes. If you like this video, please like, rumble, share, subscribe. Comment to let me know if you think I'm just an embittered asshole who doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about, or if you agree. Do you have your own theories on what might happen to the franchise? Expect more videos to come from me in the future, and I'll see you on the next one.